Welcome back, my business besties. Are you tracking your metrics? You're probably thinking, my what? I have an amazing guest today, Tory Krone. Have you heard of Practice Vital yet? You're going to hear about it today. It is something that you need that you may not even know that you need it. Welcome to the show, Tory.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm thrilled to talk with you. I just know that therapists aren't numbers people, but it's the score to see how you're doing. Do you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
before we even get into what is Practice Vital, I would love for you to share a bit about who you are and how Practice Vital happened.
Sure. I'm a therapist, first and foremost. I started a group therapy practice in 2015, and I am not a numbers person. So I kind of went into psychology partly for that reason. I love people, I love relationships, I love to figure out how people work and what's behind that. And I never really imagined myself, even as a business, I have a business mindset as well, but I never imagined that I would be really needing so many numbers to run my therapy practice. That just didn't really, I thought if I'm a good supervisor, if I show up every day and I make a great culture, and, like the finances will kind of just work out. And often, they actually did for a while, because I think that a practice of five can function in a way that a practice of 10 doesn't, or 20, and so on. And so when I was running my group practice, I just discovered, especially when COVID hit and we moved to telehealth and out of the office, that I was just guessing on how my practice was doing. There was a ton of guesswork. Things were happening behind closed doors that hadn't been before. We used to just see each other, and I had a sense of which clients were returning and how often. But after everything kind of became more siloed, I just didn't have that same information. And at the same time, my practice grew, as many people's practices grew during, COVID time. And so I just was realizing more and more how much I needed numbers to run my business and to take the guesswork out.
Nice. And then you created Practice Vital. So what is
Correct.
that exactly and how does it help?
Yeah. Yeah. So Practice Vital is the only automated metrics dashboard for group practice owners. So it is designed to pull data automatically from several different EHRs, including Jane, since I know that you work a lot with them, at least every 12 hours. And it pulls all of the data that you need to run your practice in an easy to understand dashboard, where you can, toggle between different years, time frames, quickly get to the data that you need. And there's no more need for downloading spreadsheets, making new spreadsheets out of reports that you've downloaded in the EHR. So it's a really simple to navigate, easy to use dashboard at its
Oh,
simplest.
and we're
Yeah.
so visual. I'm so visual and I'm a scanner. My
Yeah.
brain works. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Colby, but I'm a quick start. So I just need to
Oh.
scan information to move on to the next task. That's the way my brain works. So if there's a lot
Mhm.
of data, I actually like my brain doesn't want to be slow enough to sit and siphon through it. And I think
Yeah.
those listening though, they're probably wondering, okay, but what should I even be tracking? What's on the dashboard? I don't even think they know. They don't even have a spreadsheet, some of them, Tori. So walk them through what is actually on the dashboard.
Yeah, yeah. And this is such a good point. So there's two things. One is I can share all the different metrics that I do think practice owners should be tracking no matter what size practice you have. But the other point is it's just as important is in terms of what you track, or just as important as what you track is how you're tracking it. So if you are tracking things, and to your point, they're just put into a spreadsheet that you can't really use or make sense of, you're not going to do much with it. And so I think there's a lot of practice owners who are actually, they think they know I need numbers, they know I need it in Excel sheet, and they might be tracking the numbers once in a while, but if it doesn't make sense to you in a cohesive whole in terms of what do I do with this number, how do I
Yeah.
make it actionable, then there's not really much of a point in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So to go back to your earlier question, in terms of the metrics we should be tracking, everyone needs to know how many sessions they're completing at the most basic level.
And that's it's basically like the sales that are coming in. You should be knowing
exactly
your sales. Yep.
Yes, you need to know your sales. You need to know how many sessions per therapist or how many sales per therapist practice wide over different periods. And then you need to know that average as well. Because if you're not tracking it over time, therapists just don't know what they don't know. And they often think that they're hitting numbers that they're not. And so they might say, oh, I must be hitting that 25, patients per week expectation because one week I did. But then there's time off and all, vacations and sick time. And so they fall behind and they don't even realize. So we have to be tracking that, and we have to be sharing that information in a way that clicks and registers for the other people who are not numbers people either. So that's our team of clinicians. Yeah, please do.
I love, because you also track the utilization rate. And
yes,
one of my suggestions is, in Canada, we hire a lot of part-time because we mostly hire contractors here. 70% of the people I work with are actually American. They hire W-2 employees typically. Yes. But a lot of new group practice owners, they don't want to hire full-time right away because that feels like a lot. Like, oh my God, I don't know if I can get this person busy. So let's say they're like, okay, I'll hire you 15 clients a week. Okay. But they're not tracking the utilization rate. Can you speak to what that is? They've probably never heard that word before, and why that matters to know.
Yeah. And in Practice Vital, utilization is as simple as your completed sessions or your sales out of your expectation. So it's just it's pretty simple actually. So if it were, let's say 20 per week out of a goal of 25, then you would have a utilization rate of, please help me because the math, 80%.
Yeah. Oh, you're asking the wrong girl.
Yeah. Here we are. Okay. That's why Practice Vital does it for us.
Yeah. So guys, if you picture a shift, so I always say, don't hire anybody unless they can give you at least 3 5-hour shifts. I also teach you to run a room for 10 hours. So you're going to have 2 5-hour shifts in each room. And why this matters is you might notice, wait a minute, this room is empty. This person isn't actually like, there's let's say at 80% or even 50%, hopefully not, utilization rate. And then they ask for a raise. It's like, wait a minute, I'm going to go to this dashboard to actually see if you're hitting your KPIs, your key performance indicators here.
Yeah, absolutely. And people are often hiring when they shouldn't be hiring. And I see that in the data. So every day I work with practice owners. They come in, we do a free training with them, kind of a coaching call to help them understand their numbers and to see where they're at and then set some goals around it. And every single time, everybody has surprises. And it's usually things they don't like. But once they see it, then they can make the changes.
100%.
So, there's often times where they're like, oh, I just, extended offers to 3 new people. And I look at their total utilization for the practice, how well utilized all of the different clinicians are. And it's like 60%, 50%. And I'm wondering, why are we hiring unless let's maximize the people that we do have, especially if they are W-2 employees, because there's a lot of benefits and overhead to that, 100%. To that structure.
Exactly. And what are your thoughts on, though, if they hire somebody that does something completely different? So I talk about offering steak. So right now on the menu, if you only have chicken, there is some people for steak, right? So
Yes. In that case, I totally, understand it. I'm seeing it more often where they're a generalist and we're bringing in another generalist because this person just keeps losing clients. So I'm just going to bring someone else on. Yeah. And, but we're not really looking at the big picture.
I love that.
The biggest thing with Practice Vital and with a dashboard, if you're going to make a dashboard, have the numbers in one place where it's very easy to see the big picture. So another metric that we should be tracking is retention. Everyone needs to track their retention. And I don't mean one session returning because that's not actually retention. It means that a client came back one time, but really all the research shows that clients need to come back at least for 8 sessions at a bare minimum, even for adjustment disorders or stress, in order to meet their treatment goals or to, have progress, make progress. And so, I know in Jane it's measured as 1. And so people are often surprised to find out that actually, and I mean, retention is just one session. So when they come and see Practice Vital and we're measuring it against 8 sessions, then they're really surprised because they're like, wow, we're actually only keeping 40% of our clients to the 8th session. And that's a huge waste of resources. We're definitely losing money, and we're not helping the clients that we agreed to help.
Exactly.
So that's the most important piece of it.
I think too that we work so hard for that lead. We pay the money, that marketing dollars.
Absolutely.
That if you want to grow the fastest, actually focus on LTV, the long-term value of the client,
Yes.
which is basically retention, because that's just money coming in with really no effort. And I want to circle back in a second to like, they're probably thinking, okay, great, but tell me how. But before we get there, it is really hard to track, like to actually come up with a retention number. And I think one of the reasons is because I suggest that people do free consult. It's really important that they get to talk to you first to get or not you, that your therapist.
Yeah.
But that messes up the retention number. It can. And so does new clients coming in, discharging clients. How do you measure retention in an accurate way?
Yeah. So that's some of the beauty of having Practice Vital is, people come and they're like, oh, my EHR just doesn't have good reporting. And we've heard from every single, EHR, somebody representing every EHR, and they all say the same thing. And we understand now that we've done this for a couple of years, why they have limitations, because we customize a lot of that. So for example, we will eliminate the consult call from retention. So we can exclude it.
Nice.
You can still track it. You can see that it happened, but it won't factor in. We can also take out other codes. So let's say you have a one-off type of session, like a short-term premarital counseling, and you want to exclude that from retention because you know that they're only going to stay for 3 sessions. We can exclude that client so that you feel like your retention is really tracking what you want it to be tracking. Okay. So we are tracking from the intake session as session 1, and then up from there to session 8, but even that's customizable because we have client or customers who are doing a lot of trauma work, and they want to make their retention threshold 12 or 15 at a minimum.
Shouldn't it be though, right? If a treatment plan is minimum 12, that like you would never break your arm and halfway through your physio say, you know what, I'm okay. Like I feel I can kind of move it.
Right. Yes, exactly. And, and that's something that we need to do is the physio probably is a little more clear a lot of times with the patient about the treatment plan and about how long it's going to take. And that's one thing that gets in the way or interferes with people retaining clients is that clinicians haven't been trained to have those types of conversations. And so we need to have those kinds of conversations and educate the client on the process of therapy and how long it's going to take.
Yes. So let's talk about retention.
Sure.
I think we could call it almost like foreshadowing when they start to say, most clients really begin to see results around the 8th session. Guys, if you say that, what are they naturally going to do? It's like social influence. They're going to say, oh my gosh, well, I'm not going anywhere until then. Like, why would I leave before then?
Totally. Yes.
What else do you suggest?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are practice level changes and then there's clinician level changes, and we need to do both. So as a practice, we need to know our overall retention rate. And then we need to work as a practice to improve it, right? And I can't tell you the number of practices, again, who they see the retention is 40%. I mean, that is really common, startlingly common. And they thought, oh, we really are retaining our clients. And there are practices, we just met with someone with 150 clinicians. They got in and saw their data and they were like, what? How are we losing the majority of clients before the 4th session? Because you can actually see, where are people dropping off and are they churning? That's another metric that we're looking at. Are they leaving before the 4th session, which is a different skill set. So practice level changes, clinician level changes. As a practice, we want to first let the clinicians know and the supervisors, the whole team needs to know the importance of retention. We can't just start with, here's something we're going to track without really talking about the values that underlie that. So I always recommend go to your team first and have a conversation about what do you think clients need? How many sessions do you think a client needs in order to be successful in therapy? Start with a question, because you'll be surprised. They will say things like 20, 25. And then when they see what they're averaging, which is another number we show separate from a retention rate, we show your average number of sessions with each client. And they will see it 6. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, we're losing money. And, we're not even getting to the lifetime value that we expected, and we're not helping the clients in the way that we were. So First have the conversation and educate before you show them any numbers. Yes. Don't show them numbers before you set an expectation.
Oh, that is so good. I love what you did there, where you asked a question. I talk a lot about people can't be defensive when they're talking. So if you draw it from them, then they're coming up with it, guys.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. Right. And then they're not saying, whoa, how do I have a 40% retention rate? So first start with educating. Let everybody know then what the goal is. Do we agree as a team that we want to get our clients, at least 70% of our clients who come in the door, to the 8-session mark? Can we agree on that as a team before you show them again the numbers? So now you're starting with getting their buy-in. That's the first step. Get everybody's buy-in, get everybody's understanding of what it means. And then we need to have a system where everybody is looking at that number over time on a regular basis and committing to making the changes and setting that goal around it. So we want the supervisors logging in to Practice Vital on a weekly basis, if not more often, and looking at their team. What is my team's average? They can see just their team of clinicians so that they can track and see how they're doing. Then we want the clinicians logging in and taking ownership over that. We want to empower them to manage their own client care.
I have a question about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're talking, and they can log in and see only theirs. Can they also see on their own dashboard the average of the clinic so they can compare?
Yeah, so they don't see the practice wide, and there's been a few different reasons for that, but we encourage the practice owner to share the practice numbers. Exactly. Yeah, and they could take a screenshot of it and share with the team, but there are some numbers that practice owners don't want to share, and so we're just careful about which permissions and what they see. That's important. What they can see is which clients have rebooked a session, which have not rebooked. How many active clients do I have on my caseload, who are truly have been here in the past 60 days? So we're not looking at just a roster, and they can see the average number of sessions that each client is staying. They can see their churn rate, their cancellation rate, their completed sessions, which exact sessions, how often they've waived the fee. So a lot of different numbers. And like I said before, those numbers all go together and they tell a story. So we have to see the numbers together, because otherwise we might be feeding a leaky bucket where we just see, oh, this person isn't meeting their utilization or their session goal, whatever, their sales goal. And so we just keep giving more clients because, that must be the reason, when really it's that we're not keeping the clients. So we have to see that.
Or something. Usually, what would you say is typically the biggest problem?
In terms of interfering with retaining clients? Yeah. So I would say for newer clinicians, it tends to be the churn is the issue. So that they're losing the clients in those first 3 sessions.
Actually, do you mind defining churn? I feel like people listening may not know what that is.
Yeah. It's really important to track. It's a version of retention, but it's the % of clients that you're losing before the 4th session. So essentially, client comes in for an intake session. They stay for maybe 1, 2, possibly 3 sessions, and they're out the door. So we want to track that because it's a bit of a different skill set than actually long-term work with clients, long-term clinical work. So what I find is that sometimes newer clinicians will lose clients in those first few sessions. So their churn rate will be high, which is not ideal. We don't want to lose a third of our clients right out of the gates. So the things that I work on with them, when I see, oh, you have a higher churn rate, once a client stays with you, you actually keep them a long time. I can see that. But what I want to help you with is really targeting that assessment process and making it more relational. At least in my practice, we've gotten our churn rate from 20% to 8%. And it was because I did really targeted coaching with every person on the team and saw, where are you losing clients? Where is your skill deficit? And how can I help? And so I go in there, and the data is meant to help them grow. Mm-hmm. So again, if we can get people past that initial 3 sessions, then it's likely that they can continue. But if we lose them right out of the gates, we have no chance.
Yes. And I wonder too, if it has to do with rapport building, warmth,
Yes,
so,
all of it. Confidence.
Yes, confidence.
Confidence exactly. is so big because it is, we hate to think of it as a sale, but it is. We are selling ourselves as therapists to new clients. And when they first come in, they have unlimited choice. I don't know what it's like in Canada, but in the United States and where I am in Chicago, it is a saturated market. It is so, there's one therapist per person. Yeah. So if you think about clients coming in for the first time, if they don't have an immediate connection or they don't feel like you're really getting them, they'll just go find someone else.
Yes. So I feel too, there's the mirror neurons. Like confidence also to me has to do with that they sense that you can sit with their pain and you can hold space. And and I love that you do the coaching. Sometimes also, I wonder your thoughts about this, the therapist actually needs their own therapy so they can sit with somebody else's pain and work through their own. And so part of that is sharing like, oh, my own journey, therapy made such a difference for me. Have you, in a very tactful way, obviously.
Yeah. And what I tell clinicians often is, especially if they've come from like an inpatient setting or they're right out of grad school, they've learned how to do an assessment in a very clinical kind of hospital-like way, where it's, tell me about your history of suicidality or, things that it might not really feel relevant to the client. And so, of course, this depends on how your practice wants to do it. But I've found the most success when you just come in and it's just relationship first. Let's get to know each other. You tell me what matters most to you for me to understand today. And we will get to the other things. We'll get to your history. We'll get to the family life, if it's relevant. But we don't need to just start with kind of this check mark, check the box thing. So that's really helpful with getting them in past the first few sessions, I would say. And then, those longer term clinical skills, again, we want to know, where are we losing people and which kind of clients are we losing? So, it helps to kind of look at who have we kept the longest and who tends to fall out, right out of the gates. And we had one customer who recently told us she found out a therapist on her team, her retention dropped a lot. And so that's another important thing. You don't want to just look at retention, but you want to look at it in context. You want to see the changes over time, because it could tell you a therapist is burnt out. It can tell you a lot of different things.
Or if they're poaching your clients also. So if retention drops, guess what? Oh no, they're still coming just to their solo practice. That's a big piece as well. That can be on top of the numbers. Just to say another quick thing. I noticed that because I was so on top of my numbers, I wish you existed back when I had a group. People it's like, if you're on top of your numbers, people won't mess with you. They won't poach your clients because they know that you'll see it. They know that you look under the hood. You know what I mean? And hopefully people don't do that, but sometimes they do.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true on a clinician basis, but also just in an overall sense of accountability across the practice. We want everyone to know that we're working towards the same goals and that there's transparency and that you're looking at the numbers all together and that you're making informed decisions on their behalf. So I want them to know, if I'm not giving a raise right now, there's a good reason for it. It's because here's our average session revenue, for you specifically, and maybe you don't want to share to that extent, but they know that you are a business savvy person who is really making these informed decisions and not just kind of guessing or, saying no for no reason. Compensation should be very much driven by the big picture numbers, not just how many sessions can I complete.
100%. And I believe that good leaders know the goals of their therapists, that they know the financial goals, they know the career goals. They want to be a supervisor one day, and even their personal goals, those should be in the 90-day check-ins or reviews. And so you can actually tie the practice vital revenue to their personal goals to motivate them.
Yep. Yeah, you can do it with everything. It can be, your churn rate dropped to 5%. So that makes it possible for us to pay you more. Or,
Yeah.
it means that we can give you more clients because we're not thinking of it as a leaky bucket anymore.
Yep.
So we're tracking improvements, we're celebrating improvements, and it's not about micromanaging. I want to be really clear about that because, that's kind of a turnoff for a lot of practice owners. They are very heart driven. And I think that actually can get them into problems because we have to also make decisions that are going to benefit the practice in a sustainable way.
Yeah.
So it's not about micromanaging. It's about just making informed decisions
Yeah.
rooted in
And one
data.
last question, because I think
Yeah,
people are wondering this.
sure.
How often should they be meeting with their clinician? Because I think I suggest monthly meetings. They can bring this up in
Yes.
a monthly meeting, and then everybody will have access to their own dashboard, which is great. But
Yes, if
how
they'd like
often are you
to.
sitting down with them?
Right. Right. So good question. I'm amazed at how many practice owners or leaders are not meeting with their teams. They're meeting with people who are not fully licensed, but then they're like, oh, well, they're fully licensed. So we meet at the annual review or we meet for a quarterly review. But I think, how are we really helping support their growth and making sure that everyone's on the same page unless we're meeting frequently? So you need to be looking at the data, the big picture all the time. I'm in there every day, not just once a quarter. And we want to be meeting with them. Yes, I meet with them. I meet with every person on my team monthly. I want to be the one who really can talk through the trends and help coach them on those things. But a clinical director can do that, absolutely. But I encourage you to not just share a report. We have a way to download a pretty, PDF with picture, colors, and it's very nice to look at. And you can do that at some point if you've introduced the numbers. But first, I say use it as part of a conversation where you can flip through. You were retaining clients really well back then, and that's when you were seeing individuals. And now you're seeing couples, and the retention has dropped a lot. Maybe we either need more support in couples work, or maybe we want to go back to just working with individuals if that feels better to you and to the clients and it's working better. So we want to use it as a springboard for a conversation on a regular basis, not as like a performance review only.
Yeah, I think, in the end, positive psychology tells us that people want to do good. They want to excel. And
They
bringing
do.
up that conversation might be relief for them. Like, oh my gosh, you know what? I felt that I'm not really excelling in couples. Thank you so much for giving me permission to lean back into
Yes,
individuals. Thank you,
exactly.
thank you, thank you for all of this. I
Yes.
know that people are going to want to click that link in the show note. So please tell them
Sure.
what you have for them and they can head on over to the show notes to grab it.
Sure. So they can go to practicevital.com and complete the form there. And in the referral section, they can get $30 off their first month of the subscription if they use the link in your show notes or they use McCann's method as the code.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, take
Yeah.
a look. Thank you so much. I really think,
Thanks for having me.
I think this is going to help with not only growth, but also culture. That
Yes.
finally, the biggest thing I felt was kind of lonely at the top. And there's something about this dashboard that you truly feel like a team. You're all
Yes.
rallying together because there's a scoreboard.
That's right. That's right. And it's transparent and we all know what we're working towards. So yeah, you got it. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for coming.